Chapter. Okay, hello guys. So I'm in San Diego at the airport, um, here for the weekend for the Society for Neuroscience annual conference. And here is a guy that I met at the gate when I was leaving Chicago. And he agreed to an interview here at Baggage Claim. And so here we go, introducing Dr. Jamal B. Williams. Okay, already. All right, so what's your name?
Jamal Williams,
Jamal Williams, PhD?
PhD.
Excellent job. And so what do you do your research in?
My research field is mainly in how complex genetics drives various behaviors, specifically in young ages.
Tell us, what do you mean by complex genetics?
Complex genetics is when genetics drive a particular phenotype or trait that's not usually associated with one particular gene. So complex genetics is how all these little variations across the genome drive that particular behavior.
And so what kind of behaviors in particular, or what kind of phenotypes in particular?
Well, most of what my lab is interested in now is studying ADHD. So we look at ADHD as this binary phenotype. So what are the genetic drivers that we can look at that's involved with whether a person has ADHD or not? But as you can imagine, that doesn't capture the whole story. There's not really clean cutoffs, although a lot of the diagnostic framework is formed around like the DSM-5, for example. So we also look at behaviors related to ADHD, such as like hyperactivity, impulsivity, inattention, and also emotional dysregulation.
So, maybe, hopefully we'll have time. We might not, but maybe we can even pick up this conversation another time, because I'd really like to ask you about how similar the two phenotypes are, autism spectrum disorder and ADHD.
Yep.
I'm diagnosed ADHD, and my psychiatrist suggested that, because I identify with the spectrum,
Mhm.
but he said that ADHD is actually sort of a sufficient etiology for my behaviors. I don't need to look at anything else, any other labels.
Well, ADHD is also a spectrum disorder,
Yeah, right.
And I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head in terms of like the diagnostic
Comorbidity? Oh, okay.
prevalence between,
Yeah.
the overlap between
Okay,
the two.
right.
But it is pretty significant.
Yeah.
However, I can say my lab has explored this, not intentionally, but sort of serendipitously.
Okay.
We discovered in our lab, at least, that specifically looking at the genetics of childhood ADHD, we found it to be about 95% genetically correlated with autism spectrum
Wow.
disorder. And I have not seen that anywhere else in the literature.
Yeah. I hadn't come across that. Okay.
Yeah, so again, there's already pretty well understood diagnostic prevalence and overlaps and how those things are comorbid with each other. And from what I recall, they are pretty significant.
Yeah.
But really, just in our work exploring how ADHD and its related behaviors genetically overlap or correlate with other phenotypes, one thing that stood out was, wow, this, we weren't really interested in the overlap,
Right.
but
you kept coming across
it's
it.
pretty significant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty significant.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay, so the first question that I wrote on, and this is the first time I've ever given the questions ahead of time, because usually I just stop people in the street.
Mhm.
So the first question that I wrote on the note that I passed to you was, what are you materially? How do you answer that?
What am I materially?
Yeah. What material are you made of?
Is this like a biological question? Maybe you can help me understand it a little bit.
Yeah, but that's part of the question is, do you home in on biology? Do you introduce something else? Do you have a metaphysical existence as you see it?
So, I mean, as a biologist, I guess I could describe, that I'm just made up of this kind of organic material, the same organic material made up of everything else in the universe. But I don't really identify like that
Okay.
if I'm thinking about myself. I would say that materially, I'm just a collection of all of my experiences
Okay.
and all of the
So you would say you're
experiences that were important.
immaterial. Oh, but those experiences, are they material? Like, are they neural arrangements?
They can be. They
But
can
they
be.
can also not be?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't want to define yourself materially.
Yeah, it'd be difficult for me to do that. It'd be
Okay.
difficult for me to answer this question in
Okay.
that way.
Very good. So I think, so I mean, I put a lot of questions, but I'm thinking about time, and also I think I just want to focus on that right there.
Mm.
Um, oh, unless, first of all, was there a question on there that you thought was really interesting that you wanted to?
Yeah, I skimmed through uh, the questions, and I remember some questions at the bottom being around like the neurotypical brain,
Yeah,
but then you also asked a separate question around like what would you want
the public.
the public to know about neuroscience, and those two questions seem for me personally to be like one and the same.
Agreed.
For me, so when we use words like neurodivergent and neurotypical,
Okay.
I think it's a great attempt to try to say that we exist on a spectrum,
Sure.
right? In terms of our like cognitive ability, our intelligence, and personality, and how all those things mix together. It's a great attempt, but I don't feel like it entirely captures it because it still creates this binary domain,
Right.
right? Like you're either neurotypical or you're neurodivergent,
Right. But of
right?
course, very few people are, whatever type you would define as neurotypical, almost nobody is that exact thing.
Yeah, exactly. So if we accept that both being neurotypical and being neurodivergent are also spectrums that blend into each other, then we should just merge those things and understand that we are just this broader spectrum of cognitive ability,
Yeah.
intelligences, and
And
various things
cognitive
like that.
style or type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
also think it's important to understand like that this question is it's a dynamic it gives her a dynamic response because for example how we define neurotypical or neurodivergence today is very different than like most of the entirety of our existence as a species over the last few hundred thousand years, right? So what's neurotypical today is this relatively new concept of education and how we sort of ask children to stay or young adults to stay in one particular environment for a really long period of time and to not really talk too much or not really engage too much. And if you can't do that correctly,
Then you're
then you're
neurodivergent.
neurodivergent. But that's a very new concept,
Yeah.
and as sort of social domains rapidly evolve because of these other environmental influences, that goalpost keeps changing
Yeah.
and what it means to be neurotypical,
Yeah.
and it doesn't do our species justice of saying, well, we have this selective advantage, right? That exists within us across these few 100,000 years of our existence.
Well, I didn't understand the last bit. It does us an injustice, a disservice to what?
To not really understand like that these selective advantages exist have been able to be retained over a few 100,000 years. So our social norms are actively challenging this evolutionary advantage. So let's go back to ADHD, for example.
Yeah, Tom Hartman talked about how it was an advantage in hunter-gatherer society. That's what
Exactly.
I keep thinking about.
Exactly, right? So when we describe terms like neurotypical versus a neurodivergent, that's a bit challenging to say, right? Because we're a few 100,000-year-old species that this was a selective advantage, and only
Right.
recently,
So we have to remember how relative it is,
yeah.
and then also, yeah, how sort of subjective the definitions are. Yeah.
And even how relative it is to modern ways
Yeah,
of education.
absolutely.
Education in just a couple thousand years ago looked very different. It was more engaging. It was more let's sit
Oh
around.
shit, we're gonna miss our bags. The carousel has stopped.
But did people take their bags off?
Yep, because nobody's there anymore.
You want to?
Do you think you could run over, see what's going on? See whether they've already blown up our bags?
I feel like I didn't see anybody grab bags.
Well, there were a bunch of people huddled there, and at one point I saw bags on, and the carousel was moving. And now there's nobody there, no bags, and the carousel isn't moving.
Our customers arriving on Southwest Airlines flight 2714 from Chicago Midway.
Yes.
There's still some bags in carousel number 5.
Great. Okay.
So they heard us talking.
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
So wanna
Excellent.
just grab those and come back.
Yeah. Okay, here you go. Thanks, buddy, for that.
Yeah.
And again, thanks for doing this conversation with me. Okay, so here's the meat of it. So the way I see it, actually, I think I want to ask you, actually, before just stating what I think I want to ask you one more question. What aspect of your experience could you attribute to something outside of the brain?
What aspect of my experience? What experiences we talking about?
Perceptual, sensational, cognitive.
Outside of the brain. That's quite difficult for me to answer.
Yeah. If you're avoiding saying nothing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know that I have a formed answer for
Yeah.
that.
No, but I mean, if you're avoiding the answer, nothing. There's nothing of my experience that I can attribute to outside of the brain. That makes answering the question difficult.
Yeah,
Because I think, for me, it's easy.
Okay.
I would say nothing.
yeah.
Okay, so, and this is going to sound a little bit patronizing. It's also for the viewers. You know how speech production works.
I'm a bit familiar.
Okay, can you name the area that we associate with speech production?
I would say, although this is not my specialty or
It
field,
isn't. It
Broca's region,
Exactly.
I would
right.
say is associated. Now there may be other regions that I'm
Of
not
course.
familiar with because
Yeah.
it's not my space.
But Broca's is what I was looking for. What about speech comprehension? Do you remember that from?
Speech comprehension, no.
So Broca's being here, and then Wernicke's
Yeah.
being here.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you come across in your research some sort of a relay system? So we know that the message is sort of initially received here in Wernicke's.
Mm-hmm.
We know that the response is sort of ultimately, the commands for I guess it connects the motor area and there's cranial nerves and all that stuff. But sort of the last stop on the neural train is Broca's area for responding.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't see yourself as a brain, right?
No.
So I would imagine then that there's some sort of a relay system to go to you and then go back for the information to go to you, and then come back to the brain to send out a response.
Okay.
Have you come across such a relay system?
No. I haven't. But again, this is not really my area of expertise.
Yeah.
And I haven't spent a lot of time other than like your basic neuroscience
Yeah.
classes thinking about
Maybe
this.
it feels like I'm putting you on the spot, and some of these questions are kind of rhetorical, because the point that I'm trying to make is that the most sort of meaningful and accurate way for you to look at yourself is as a brain.
Mm-hmm.
I know that if I, for instance, stimulate here in I don't know if I actually point in the right place, but in the temporal parietal junction, I can provoke an out-of-body experience.
Okay.
I don't know where, but I know that if I stimulate elsewhere, according to the neurologist Robert Burton,
Mm-hmm.
I can provoke the feeling of certainty. Okay? I know that if you have damage to your ventromedial prefrontal cortex and I give you the trolley dilemma, or actually, I ask you to make any decision, you're going to have to rely on the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which doesn't really use emotion, and so you're going to get stuck. It's going to be really hard for you to make any decision. I know that Phineas Gage, when he took a bar through here, although it's been exaggerated, the changes, his personality at least temporarily changed. All this makes me think that you, and let's even take that word you, when I'm talking to you, what's receiving this?
It's multiple things for me. So when we're just having a conversation, various different parts of my peripheral and central nervous system is receiving information that I'm absorbing from this conversation.
And when you say where's that absorption happening?
The absorption is happening everywhere. For me, it's happening in like how I feel sitting in this chair,
Yeah.
the smell of this environment,
Yeah.
right? Like the taste in my mouth. And
Yeah.
the
But let
words
me
that
ask
you're
you
saying.
something. If, let's say you're sitting in this chair, but I sever your body, so the information, this sensory information, can no longer make it to the brain. Are you going to be experiencing sitting in the chair? Like, are you going to be experiencing this sensory information from down?
It's possible. It's possible that I'll
It's
be.
possible with a severed spinal cord for you to be able to perceive sensory information in your feet?
It's possible. If
You mean if someone replaced the spinal cord with something artificial?
no. I mean, I'm thinking more of like V.S. Ramachandran kind of like phantom. Like
So you could experience sensory foot information, but it wouldn't be the information being sent from the foot.
exactly, yeah. But it'd be
Okay.
a perception of it.
Right.
But to kind of work my way up to, like what you're speaking to and
Yeah.
what you're talking about and how, my eyes and my ears and all of those, faculties are receiving
Integrated, sort of.
are integrating it. They're landing on spots across my cortex
Yeah.
that have some or no prior knowledge to the information that you're giving me.
Okay.
Right, and I'm trying to process that and
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to make a decision. So one of the questions you asked is this kind of classical question of what is consciousness and or what is how can you best I don't think you said
Yeah,
what is
what's
consciousness.
your best definition or description of consciousness?
Yeah. So like if someone asked me what is consciousness, the answer would be easy, like I don't know. I would just
Yeah,
say I don't know
right.
what consciousness is. But the way you described the question is like, what's your best definition of it? Is tying in all these things that you're trying to. I think you're trying to get at right now. And there's so many gaps and so many holes in it. But the best thing that I could say is not only is like if I'm trying to describe it as my ability to, or a person's ability to be alert or be aware of their environment,
Yeah.
but also where do they fit within that environment?
Sure.
Right. So I think consciousness might mean that I'm understanding the environment around me. I'm understanding what and receiving what you're giving me as this entity sitting right here, not as that suitcase on the other side. Like I know I'm not that thing over there.
Right.
While I'm sitting here talking
Right.
to you, and I still don't really know what's behind that.
Yeah.
I don't know what's behind that, but I know that that's what feels like consciousness. To
But
me.
here's the thing. If I put a computational system, let's say you were talking about this suitcase. I put a computational system in that suitcase. All the sensors that are here are hooked up to that computational system. So those eyes and so on. That computational system is also able to send signals to the muscles and so on over here. You probably would still think you're over here. But aren't you over there?
Yeah.
So are you the computational system that's connected to your sensory and motor systems?
Yes.
Okay, so we call that the brain.
Yes. But I can only even attempt to answer this question if we assume that not all humans are always conscious all the time. Now, if you say that all humans are always conscious all the time, then I have no words to describe what is consciousness.
Or any odd shaped package.
I want to follow up with consciousness in another conversation. I'm really enjoying talking to you. But just because we have to go rent a car, and by the way, we can drive you. We're gonna go rent a car, but I guess you would have to wait a little bit while
Yeah,
we do
it's okay.
that.
I can.
So,
Yeah.
Here's why it matters to me so much that brains see themselves as brains. We have a lot of information about the errors that brains make, right? The, advantageous in general, or at least historically, heuristics by which we make decisions and interpret things and so on. People don't look at that because they don't think it's relevant to them. They think of themselves as this immaterial, reliable perceiver and interpreter that is maybe sometimes led astray by their silly, meaty brain, but that not all the time, and they don't really need to know the details of that because they know their own, they as in this soul in the ether, they know their thoughts and they know how to be rational and so on.
Okay.
So this is my objection to people not seeing themselves as brains, or to the world, not seeing themselves as brains. I want people to learn about how thinking actually works and not think that they know because what they experience of their thinking is actually their thinking. That's not the case, right? So my motivation, does that make sense? Okay. Have I also made a case for why it's meaningful and accurate for that computational system to see itself as a brain? Can you say something to me that would get me to rethink that I'm a brain, or that it's meaningful and accurate enough for me to see myself as such?
Can I say something to you?
Yeah, do you have a reason that you could articulate why you're not a brain? And I know it's not our experience, which is why it's such a persistent myth that we are this other thing. But beyond our experience.
So you don't think experiences are
I
enough
don't think they're reliable.
Are enough. Well, outside of reliable, but reliable or not, you don't think that it's an accurate definition for one to describe themselves as a collection of experiences? Isn't that what heuristics is?
I didn't understand the second half of the question, but I can respond to the first, I think, which is that an amnesiac who has lost touch with a lot of their experiences, that's not influenced by a lot of, some of their experiences, they are a lot of implicit stuff and so on. But, they're missing a lot of other pieces.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that that's like a fundamentally different person. I would say that is, it's the person is different, but I wouldn't say fundamentally because I don't define the person as their set of experiences.
Okay. Can you have perception without recognizing your set of experiences?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it probably happens. I think most of, our perception happens without any processes involving the rest of our experiences. Our perception is, of course, affected by our past experiences because that changes the perceptual networks. But I think my answer would be yeah.
Yeah.
Here's another angle I want to hit this from. The brain is capable of thinking, talking, understanding, and so on, right? So you think that your brain, and I think it's even silly to talk about your brain because the only thing in this system that can understand the words your brain is the brain, right? And the brain doesn't really have a brain, I don't think. You could maybe say the cerebellum, maybe say the gut brain. I don't know, not really. So when I say you, I am referring to the brain because that's the only thing that can understand the word you, and also the only thing that can send out the word I. So the other, so that's part of the other angle I want to hit it from. Now, if this gut brain were to evolve a lot more, and it had guttural nerves that could control the mouth and the lungs and the pharynx, a glossopharyngeal cranial nerve, guttural nerve, you would, in my opinion, well, first of all, two computational systems would be processing what I'm saying.
Okay.
And the one that had this conversation with me back in 2025, before the gut brain sort of magically developed in your long lifetime. Are you following me so far? I'm kind of,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It's only that would remember this conversation, right? Because the memory of this conversation is stored in that, right?
Okay.
In you. So we tend to think of ourselves as this whole thing. I think of myself as an organ in this whole thing, and I just happen to be the only organ in this whole thing that's capable of sort of the kinds of computation and verbality. That's maybe not a word, but that I am, you know? So if you had another computational system that also could compete for control of the mouth, there would be like two speakers, two thinkers, right?
Yeah.
And then when we do that thought experiment, does it make it more clear that you are not this whole thing? You are just the thing capable of understanding this sentence?
A bit. But like you mentioned, like how the brain is controlling these other factors, and what if this other thing developed to control those factors? What about the things that have already evolved to control the brain?
What controls the brain?
So for example, like if we think about the trillions of cells that our body is made of, and we think about how most of those cells are not even of the human species, and they're
Bacterial,
different microorganisms.
Right.
I'm not sure that we're not just some vector for some other ancient microbial species that has
This body
hijacked. Yeah, but that also may be sending signals to the control center.
Yeah.
So yeah, I recognize that the control center is the thing that's making all those decisions, but are there factors that are making that too?
There are.
And that's what makes it seem a little bit abstract. And actually, I don't typically do well in environments like this because these questions are really important. And these are the type of questions that could probably take me all year to think about how to answer. In some questions, maybe even my entire career to answer. But I'm just giving my best
absolutely.
thought right now.
Absolutely.
But I don't really know what's the major controller. If you can control the control,
then
who's in charge?
Because, maybe it's not even useful to think of a major controller. That's how. That's the easiest way for us to think of it.
Sure.
But it's just a complicated interactive system, and I see myself as sort of the collection of because the brain it's not completely integrated, right? Where every part knows what every other part is doing, but there's some integration. And so I consider myself this system, and I exist in this body with other systems. And I don't really, they might even have an experience themselves. So there's this guy, Donald Hoffman, who wrote a book, The Case Against Reality. And yes, it is Donald. I think I'm thinking of the right book. Anyway, he talks about, he has this, I can't remember what he calls it, but he would say that this chair is conscious, not in any way that we could comprehend, but that this chair is conscious. And so just sort of in that same vein, my skin might be conscious, those microbes might be conscious, collectively there might be a collective consciousness, but the word I is coming from here. This is where I am. Okay. I hope you know, maybe we can do a Zoom or something.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely going to. I have your information, so I'm going to send you the link once I've uploaded it,
Okay.
and then I can send you another link once I do like a review commentary.
Yeah. I think maybe one question that we can come back to later on too is this idea of perception, and I can take your sort of definition around this. If we think about pain as perception, which it is, I would say that's probably entirely hardwired to the brain, right? You can't have perception without the brain. For something like pain. You have some insult, you get this action potential, it creates the signal. Everybody's action potential is the same, but how you perceive that pain is different. But I think maybe what we can discuss next time, if you're open to it, is like, well, what about other forms of perception, like having a dinner, right? That is driven by sort of the genetics that cause those, particular.
Having a what?
Like having dinner, right? And perception of that experience, like from the food you eat, how you smell it before it goes into your mouth, when it touches those taste buds, that wires to your cortex, what you felt with the people around you and those experiences, and how that also created like some imprint to create a perception for how you think about those things in the future. That yeah, they are, and I think maybe this is something that we're dancing around, is like, again, like the control center, but like who controls the control, um, and once we get around other control centers, like, is there like a master controller? Are we
Right.
just autonomously operating within like
Right.
the same space? So those are things I personally don't know the answer to, but like they arise.
I bet we
in
could
my
put our
mind
heads
as-
together and come up with some pretty good answers. Of course, we won't know truth,
Yeah.
and that's what I really appreciate about you, your humility about, it takes time to think through and even just make progress on these questions. And so I'm looking forward to our collaboration.
All right. Well, thanks for taking time to talk to me.
It's been a real pleasure, Jamal.
Same here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I meant to say this in the video. I think I am gonna shave this off. Anyway, we're in San Diego for the Society for Neuroscience annual conference, and when we were at Midway Airport in Chicago, I walked by Dr. Williams there, at our gate, and I heard him say autism. He was explaining his research. And I interrupted. I was like, are you guys here for the conference? And so I got his number, and then one person from the kind of group that he was talking to, it was like 4 people, are all from the same lab. The other person, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm not out here trying to talk shit. That's all I want to say. All right, let me start this over.